So in this one, I'm going to prove out a few things with numbers, with facts, with data, things that should already be evident, but the math isn't that hard, so why not? I'm also going to tell you the problem with silver, but I'm going to use numbers that make it look so good that you need to slow down and think about some new numbers, like premiums. And we're going to have some quick charts, a few numbers, and by the end of this whole thing, we're going to have a strategy that's a little bit better than let it rip. So I've suggested a few things around here lately about gold. One is that anything below $2,300 can be seen as a dip relative to current prices. Might not feel like one, but that's a 5% drop from the recent all-time high. I saw it as a dip personally. I came off the sidelines. I bought 5 ounces in and around that price range. Another is that even though I don't think of gold as an investment, its nominal price growth has been very significant, enough to be well ahead of traditional savings options like CDs, like money market accounts. So I see it as a savings, I see it as a growth asset, not as an investment. It's all semantics, we're just picking on words, but both of these ideas fall squarely into the topic of gold's performance. And for whatever reason, people like to argue that topic. We have people who want to dress it down compared to Bitcoin or the S&P, and we get people who want to do the opposite. Not necessarily dress gold up, but I get told it is an investment, and the only logical one at that. So we get people saying it's grossly overvalued and silver's the only play. We get people saying it's grossly undervalued and everything else is about to crash. So differing opinions, I get it, I like it. And what I've been doing lately is trying to focus only on the facts, only on likely outcomes. So data and comparison. So let's do some of that. Now, I created the 2-is-1 channel February 9th, 2020, and we were either going to talk about arm locks and throws, or we were going to talk about gold and silver. We, of course, went with gold and silver, and the big reason there, of course, is COVID. Man, what a weird time, but it made some decisions for us. It was becoming pretty clear that we might have some things we're going to have to deal with that would make gold, that would make silver more relevant, so it was a decision easily made. So let's get some charts in here. There's no better way to cut through opinions people throw around like facts than to get some actual data. So if we go back to when I started the channel February 9th, the spot price of gold was around $1,500. Let's call it $1,550. Today, as I'm recording this, spot price is right around $2,415. That's a gain of 56% in 4 years. It's a hell of a gain. Maybe we just stop right there. But there's a little bit more context to this because even though I wasn't on YouTube to make crazy predictions, in one of my first videos, I gave a year-over-year look at price movement. So if we went back to February of 2019, we could see gold was already making a move. Price came in around $1,300 at the time. Call it $1,350. So that's a gain of 80% in 5 years. So even better. Yeah, but you should have bought Bitcoin. That comes up a fair amount. If you had bought Bitcoin in February of 2020, again, when I started the channel, the price was just south of $8,600. Price today, $57,500. So that's a 568% gain. So yeah, pretty good. The S&P 500 index, that was 3380 when I started this channel. It's 5580 today. That's a gain of 65%. So still pretty good. Recap, gold went up 56% in those 4 years. Bitcoin up 570%. S&P 500 up 65%. So if I'm on here saying gold is a good savings model and I don't see it as an investment, well, that performance over the past 4 or 5 years, however we want to look at it, makes a pretty strong case in that role. I don't know why there are any arguments on this, but hey, I guess this is the internet. That's what we do. And speaking of arguments, we need to really get silver on this chart. I mean, we're running comparisons, so let's drop that in there as well. In 2020, again, February, silver was about $17.60. Go back to 2019, $15.80. So pretty impressive. If we just stick to the 4 years since I started this channel, silver's gone up 76%. Now, the problem, of course, with silver is that premiums shot up immediately. They went from 15% that I had as a baseline that I was used to spending on silver to 25 to 35% and higher. Eagles were 50%. So if you were buying American Silver Eagles in that time frame, it's possible you haven't seen any gains at all, and you wouldn't be alone. You'd actually be in pretty good company. The other problem with silver is that it gave up that run in August of 2020, and then it just kind of sat. So of the 4 years from 2020 through 2023, silver only had one good year in there. So those two things, the retail physical premiums and the price volatility, are why I consider silver to be in a different category than gold. We're coming off a year where silver actually lost more than 0.5%, so it's less about savings and more about speculation. If you would look at T-bills or CDs or money markets in that period of time, they were all bringing in about 5%. So if we wanted to pull it all together, visualize this in a chart, this is how it would look. Now you can see right out of the gate that Bitcoin just makes this ridiculous. I'm going to take that out. Let's do it again. In 2020, the S&P 500 was up 16.25%. Gold was up 25%. Silver was up 47%. 2021 S&P 500 was up 27%. Gold was actually down 3.5%. Silver was down 12.5%. In 2022, S&P was down 19.5%. Gold was flat. Silver was up 2%, and then last year in 2023, the S&P 500 was up 24%, gold was up 14%, silver was down just over 0.5%. So this year, gold has been on a tear, and silver is also finally starting to make a move again. Both assets really look like they're just getting started. Now, the data, the charts that I just showed, they were really just meant to give some context in terms of annual performance. Now, the price doesn't always go up, but looking from February of 2020, again, when I started this channel, it's just hard to deny how well gold has done if we're looking at it as a savings model. Now, you might even say silver has beaten it in that period of time, but you'd be forgetting about premiums. So let me take premiums out of both gold and silver. It looks more like this. So let me just dial this back down. I wanted you to see those numbers as a basis for overall performance, but I want you to consider one more thing. Had we bought Bitcoin when the hype was at its loudest, and that's how most people do it, we would have been buying at $60,000 and we would be underwater. If we bought silver evenly every single month in this period of time that I've been talking about, from February 2020 up through 2023, we would also be underwater because 2020 is the only year in that time frame that silver's price increase has outperformed its premiums. So that is a lot to take in, lots of numbers, lots of talking, but we can't get to the important part without showing those numbers and then considering those moves in between. Gold has been a great way to save over the past few years. Silver has not. Now, I haven't stopped buying silver. I've just stopped buying it as savings, and that's why premiums and sporadic performance work against it as savings, but none of that really matters in terms of speculation. So because I view it as a speculative asset, I sold most of my silver August 2020. It was super unpopular around here. And at that time, I picked up Bitcoin and ETH with the sales proceeds. Now, I would have never done that with gold because gold was my savings. I had no idea what Bitcoin or ETH were going to do. I just got a little bit lucky on timing. But I had the advantage of thinking of gold and silver differently. I sold the rest of my silver May 1st during the second silver squeeze. That was when people were paying wild premiums on silver eagles and I had them, so I sold it all down. But I bought a few hundred ounces more again at the end of last year. That was because premiums were low and it was lagging gold pretty significantly all year. So that's what I've done with silver since starting this channel. I've mentioned it every time I've made those moves. It just hasn't been as big of a part of the channel because it hasn't been consistent. With gold, I've more or less bought it consistently each month and then only went heavier on it when I saw what I considered dips. For me, that's 5, 10, or 15%. So I buy a little bit more on a 5% drop, more on a 10% drop, and then a lot more on a 15% drop, which rarely happens. So I think this topic and this takeaway is possibly the most important thing that I could ever say in this space. These assets are different. And it's one thing to say that offhand, it's just another to explain it with facts. That's what I wanted to do here. So I started this off saying that I see gold as savings and I didn't feel like we need to defend its performance there, but I think we did that anyway. I also mentioned that people like to argue performance by comparing different asset classes in different ways. So like gold versus Bitcoin, silver versus gold, and none of that makes any sense. Gold works better as savings. Silver or Bitcoin, they work better as speculation. I've said this 100 times by now, but I haven't really shown any numbers explaining that sentiment. I've just been saying it. So this doesn't mean that one is good and one is bad. It just means they're different. And it might mean that your plans for them should also be different. If you've been buying gold, averaging your cost across those 4 years, buying a set amount every single month, well, you're ahead. If you bought a set amount of silver each month, you're not. You're upside down. And if you took the advice of buying the most popular coins in your region, it's a good plan for gold. It's a bad plan for silver. Or at least it would have been had you been buying them in 2020 when the premiums were so high. Now that's actually what I bought most of at the end of last year. So things change. And none of my moves have been anything special, but I have been happy with my gold accumulation and appreciation. I've been happy with the sale of my silver and the purchase of the Bitcoin with the ETH. I've been happy with the market, and I'm actually happy with the silver that I bought again recently at the end of last year again. That's a lot of happy. The reason, though, is simple. I just don't get the assets confused. I don't buy one thinking it's going to perform like one of the others, and I don't think that you should either. Context is important. And that's a good place to wind this down, so let us know what you think. I buried a possible lead in there. Maybe you have some new hopes for silver, tempered hopes, medium hopes. Mostly, though, I'm sticking to gold, so let us know what you're up to. If you buy one, you buy both, you buy all, let us know. And then while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.